It was it was the manipulation stuff.
Yeah.
It was that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. That stuff angers people because they trusted, they opened up the vault and they let somebody into their inner parts of their life, and then you find out they were just in there to use you. They were in there, they were on a mining expedition. They were going into your soul to mine out what they could use as leverage to control you. And that's deep. You know what I mean? That's like, oh God, that hurts. And that's what I think people are waking up to. Hey, everybody. You know what week it is. It is Thanksgiving week, Brian.
It is
Turkey
indeed.
time.
It is indeed Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this is the week, buddy. Yeah, all that. We just went shopping yesterday. I'm not kidding you. There's two of us. $500 worth of groceries.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
have,
part of it was we were down quite a bit, so we had to catch up. But yeah, and then when I travel, I eat out, so we don't have to get groceries for me. So I'm gonna be home for a while, so we stocked up on the stuff that Mikey likes.
there you go.
But we
There
got
you go.
turkeys, we got pies, we're all set.
Yeah.
Are you
You know,
guys
and
staying home? What are you guys doing?
we're going over to one of my son's houses for a Thanksgiving brunch. When your family grows and you begin to have, daughters-in-laws and daughters-in-law, I guess would be the correct grammar, and girlfriends and that kind of a thing, it becomes a scheduling nightmare. So we're
Yeah.
not even we're not even hosting this year. We're just going. So it's gonna be pretty chill.
Brian, the world is waiting for one answer from you. We are dying to know. What did you name your dog?
So the little pup, little no name, is going to be known heretofore as Daisy.
Daisy. Is Daisy lazy or Daisy's not lazy?
Daisy is not lazy. We rolled around a lot of names. I kind of resisted that name because it's a little stereotypical, but every time I looked at her, I thought, man, you are definitely a Daisy. Um, so there we go. So
All
Mike,
right. Well, congratulations, Brian. Thank God that dog is not going to be in therapy later because you didn't name it.
yeah, yes, bad dog parents. So indeed, indeed.
Well,
Fun fact,
well, go
since
ahead.
it's Thanksgiving week, fun fact about me and my family. My grandmother was into, tracing our lineage, our heritage back before you had even the internet, right? So you had to do the hard work of actually getting the paperwork and those kinds of things, going to libraries. And my mom's side of my family actually traces back to the Mayflower. So, no matter what your sort of political and social views are on the historical event of the first Thanksgiving and what it was, I have ancestors that were there. So there
Yeah,
you go.
actually, Brian, I'm not saying this to up you or whatever, but with same thing.
Yeah.
We've got Appletons go back to. There's a big Appleton farm in Central Mass and Massachusetts, and it traces back to the Mayflower, and that's our family. So, and I think there was another name too, Albertsons or something like that. Anyways, yeah. So we could, Brian, you and I could probably, this was destiny that
This was,
our families were on the Mayflower together talking about future thing. Hey, if there's ever a podcast,
we got the guys. So funny story. We went to actually our Francis Eaton is the person who we trace back to, and actually signed the Mayflower Compact and years ago. You ever been up to Plymouth Plantation?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
awesome. It's awesome.
yeah, it is. We went to Plymouth Plantation and walking around. It's a living history thing. So we're talking to some of the people who are in character, and I asked them, so they've got a house for all the original families. I said, so where's the Eaton house? And he said, Eaton, he was a bit of a rebel. He didn't want to play by all the rules, so he built his house outside the compound. So
Brian, that says something. It's in your blood, buddy. It's in your
there you
blood. We go. Well, hey, everybody. On that theme, Brian and I discussed today that we wanted to talk about, not to be stereotypical or not to be, too cheesy, but just the whole idea of being thankful, And so I'm going to go first, just kind of express what I'm thankful for. And it kind of goes into what we've been talking about. So, as I've been reflecting about what Brian and I have been doing the last couple of years and the book that I wrote and, exposing these, you know, these people that were abusing, sexually abusing, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, people that they were supposed to care for and shepherd. Brian and I are either on the side of God or on the side of evil or flesh or whatever. I don't know if there's a evil, but whatever. And because we've heard that, I specifically have heard people say to me, you're engaging in witchcraft by exposing this and, by doing this and all this stuff's coming at you. And, I got thick skin. I grew up in Boston, the South Side over there. So, I mean, but it does affect you. You do think about stuff. And I drive a lot when I'm going to these schools. I'm in my car for 2, 3 hours at a time and, just thinking about what are we doing here? We is what we're doing by exposing this stuff and talking the way we do and being angry and allowing people to be angry and is it of God? Is it okay to do this? Because it does go outside the boundaries of how we were taught. We were taught, and we can go into that at some point. We have got into that, but the whole idea that you can't, you gotta, there's a protocol. If you're gonna expose this stuff, you gotta do it nicely. And then you look at David and Goliath and you go, well, he wasn't very nice that day when he chopped off that guy's head. There isn't there isn't you play with all these mind games, and now that we're on kinda on the other side of this, not totally where I wanna be, but now we're starting to see the seams come out of the fabric of this machine that has kept people in check and kept them down. You get grateful. You're like, "Wait, justice does prevail." And it took a long time, took longer than I wanted it to take, but and then, and I go back even to my roots and my family. I was the rebel. I really was. I was the scapegoat in my family. I never bought into my mom's dysfunction because that's what it was, but it was a powerful dysfunction. It fed us. It kept a roof over our heads. It we needed it. We This is like the church, like we need the church. We need these people. We need fellowship, right? So they play on that need you have to keep you in check, to keep you in line, and that's what I felt growing up. I was at 106 Prospect Street, Weymouth, Massachusetts, and that place was hell for me, but I needed it. I had to sleep there. I had to go, get food there, but inside those walls was a lot of injustice and a lot of pain, a lot of abuse, mental, physical, and it was not sexual for me so much in that house, but because of what happened in that house, I was vulnerable to people outside the house that led me to some, pretty dark times with people that were predators. And so I that was that like growing up like that, it was the same feeling, Brian. It was like I had this feeling growing up that I know I'm right. Like I know this is wrong. I know what's happening with inside that house is not right. But I was made to believe that I was the one that was wrong and that I was causing problems in the family by exposing these things. And, you know, this but writing the book and then my brother and I reconciled about 5 years ago before I started writing the book. And just, I'm grateful to him. I'm grateful because now he's going, "No, Mike, you were right all along." Right? You were right all along. And now, and I'm not gloating over the fact that all this, like, the choices I made to do the right thing are now paying off for me. I'm not perfect in any way, but I got a pretty decent life because I've made some good choices to get out of that orbit, right? I was in that orbit. I was stuck in that weird, dysfunction, and I wanted out. And when I got out, I was the enemy. I was villainized, and and it felt shitty, to be honest with you. It felt I didn't like it. And and then when it was the same thing, Brian, when I started getting out of the church and, kind of do my own thing in schools and not including the church anymore because I saw the dysfunction in it. But I couldn't like you couldn't articulate it the way we can now, right? So I try to say it to people, "Hey, you know what? This is, we need to be unconditionally loving these people, not loving them with condition." They'd look at you like you were crazy, right? And and now that, the book's been written and these podcasts are going on and people are piling on and all kinds of other ways, not just us, but other, avenues of truth are coming out. It feels good and I'm grateful for it, but I have trepidation, this is serious stuff. Like, exposing truth is a dirty business. It really is. And you're gonna I've lost friends, you've lost friends, we've lost people that we thought we were close to, but I'm also grateful, Brian, because I'm grateful for you. I really am. I'm not trying to be cheeseball here, but I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the people we've met, I'm gonna miss people, but Melissa, and I just had a really good talk yesterday with Adam Hume, and just not to put him on the, not business, just talking, and got gained some really good friendships out of this, and some depth of relationship that's deeper than just church bullshit, and church talk, and stirring each other up to win the world. But really what that means is to, put butts in the seat and be a powerful person, and all that mess. I'm just grateful for the depth of relationships that I have. And now that this is kind of coming to a head, and and again, we want to see more justice, but being able to just see that happen in real time is really good for the soul. And I want to encourage people to keep pursuing truth, because in the end, truth is going to win. It's dirty. It's dirty business exposing truth, but it does win in the end. And so
Yeah,
I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the truth. I'm grateful that God put us on this path, Brian. You and I are the unlikely couple. We're like the odd couple. We didn't like each other when we were going to church together.
we did. Yeah, at least it worked out.
I thought you were like Neil Diamond. I really did.
Neil Diamond, maybe Neil Young, but anyway, I am grateful as well, Mike. I think, this poster, this poster right here, this Red Sox '04 poster on my wall. I've told this story on the podcast, but I got a phone call, like right after the World Series, and it was Mike. And I thought, what the hell is Mike Donahue calling me for? And, the only connection you and I really had, before we got into this, or the biggest connection was we both, knew we were from Boston, right? And for some reason at that point, Mike had gone back, the Red Sox had finally, broken the curse. They'd won the World Series. It was in a dramatic fashion. The ALCS that year was crazy. I mean, only team to come back from 3-0 to the frickin' Yankees and humiliate them and bury them in the dust
Yeah.
where they
In New
belong.
York, in New York, in
And
New York, in Yankee Stadium.
and so I get this call, and I'm thinking, why the hell is Mike Donahue calling me up? And he comes, he says, I got you something. He brought me that T-shirt, and let's call them, there's synchronicities in our lives. We make connections that don't really manifest fruit until, we don't know when down the road. And then fast forward to that fateful night when you just happen to be in Bellevue and twisted my arm into coming to Bellevue's 50th anniversary, and up on the screen popped Jeannie, and both of us were like, our eyes were popping out of our heads and fire was coming out of our ears, saying, what the hell is this? And that's really what instigated this whole thing. And I'm grateful, I guess. One of the things I'm thankful for is I'm thankful that, you can't plan these kinds of things, right? They happen. And I'm grateful for being in those places and at those times. And really, and again, I don't want to be cheeseball either, but thankful that, Mike, you're one of my best friends now. And we've grown over the course of these couple of years, not just because of the podcast, but other things. Right? And I'm thankful, I'm grateful to be doing this. And one of the reasons I'm grateful to be doing this is that for me, and you, it's been this continual, I want to say, I can't think of the word I want to use, validation that we're doing a good thing, because people keep coming out of the woodwork and saying, thank you for telling these stories. Thank you for calling these things out. Thank you because I thought I was the only one. Thank you because I thought that was crazy shit too, but there was no one I could talk to. it's validating what's in people's guts. And my experience at Bellevue was that, I mean, we came in, we got sucked into Jeannie's orbit. We were in her leadership group, JC Power, all that kind of stuff. But Cheryl and I mean, we were kind of checked out of her scene before they even left. And so we kind of started going with our gut then. Now, I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much because I stayed in the church way too long, like decades. But there was always this sense that there's something that's not right here. And there was always this desire to push back on things. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for whatever gene we got that didn't just roll over. And, our new dog, Daisy, I mean, she sees me and she rolls over on the back and says, scratch my belly. I mean, that wasn't in our nature, right? We weren't rolling over on our back and doing that kind of a thing. And so I'm thankful for, the growth that I've experienced in, the past couple of years doing this, because it'd be funny to go back and watch some of our first podcasts because we were just a couple of really pissed off people, and we worked through a lot of stuff. And I think it's been healthy on a personal basis, but I also think in a greater way, it's been healthy, for the people we've been able to connect to, and you mentioned, Melissa and Juliana and Elise. I got to meet Adam, Corey, just so many people that, we've met and connected with, and there's harmony there. But one other thing I want to say, and then I'll shut up and hear what you have to say about that. We talk a lot you hear a lot in today's chatter about cancel culture. And, the church foreran cancel culture. I mean, they were doing this in the 80s, and Mike talked about it a little bit. And it's like you were in an environment where they created these power structures, whereas if you had a question or if you pushed back or if you went another way, they would do a lot of things. They would cancel you in a lot of different ways. They would tell lies about you. They would talk about how you're being rebellious or you're bitter, or they would use all their churchy, religious, misinterpreted Bible speak to kind of try to beat you into submission. And I think one of the things that is in our future here, Mike, is we've talked a lot recently about sexual abuse, but there's also a dynamic element of spiritual abuse here that we can talk about, that I think that I'm hoping as we go down the road that people can relate to. But I'm really grateful that, and we're not reaching a million people, and it doesn't really matter because I think what we're doing here matters to the people that we're reaching. And I just want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to shut up. But if you got a problem with what we're doing, we would love to talk to you about it. And I don't mean we'd like to sit down and have an opportunity to tell you how stupid you are. I mean, some people,
Well, wait a minute.
I'm gonna
Speak for
be honest.
yourself, Brian. Speak for yourself.
Yeah, there's a couple of people that I would like to do that with, but I'm working on that, right? But we're open to open and honest conversations, and conversations without agendas. I mean, when I say without agendas, people who are willing to listen and change their mind. Because I think Mike and I have been willing to listen and change our mind, and that's part of the problem here. Part of the problem here is that people either are on one side or the other. Mike started off talking about, okay, are we doing good or are we doing evil? Well, the world's way more complicated than that. And if you want to go through life thinking you can divide the world up into those two black and white boxes, you're going to be a miserable sap. That's all I have to say. And on or off the podcast, if you've got issues, if you've got comments, if you've got questions, especially if you're from our past and you're one of those friends that we've lost, we'd love to talk to you.
No, but that's what's frustrating to me, Brian, is we have lost those friends because they go, they're ghosting and they're done talking, but none of them have come back and said, this is why. Right? Like if you say, "Hey, this is why I'm not your friend anymore." Like Corey Demmel doesn't talk to me anymore. We're not friends, right? But there's no reason why. Like he's not saying why to me. Like I have my reasons. But when I tried to give him those reasons, he took off and ran because they don't want the conflict. And I think that's what frustrates me sometimes is the idea that, hey, if you don't like what we're doing or you don't like something that I said or did, then have the guts to come to me and tell me that, right? I'm open, like you just said. We're more than open. We've been incredibly open to that, but they don't do that. And I've asked Rick Lorimer several times to have, a sit down with me and talk about this stuff. No, they literally run like away. And okay. Like that alright. I mean, if you don't wanna debate the truth, I could be wrong, right? But if you don't wanna be wrong. That's all it tells me, is that they're in their bubble, they've got their people that tell them the right things that they need to hear to keep, their opinions solid, but they're not open for anybody to come along and say, "Hey, there's a different view of this," right? And that's I don't wanna be friends with anybody like that anyways, right? I mean, I have a good friend, Todd Walker, who we talk a lot, and he doesn't wanna come on the podcast, or he probably won't, but we talk a lot. We had about a 45-minute conversation the other day, and a lot of times he differs with me on things, and I like that. Like, he's super smart. He had the same experience with Jeannie. He was under her up in Rockford, but approached it different, and so I know when I call him and I talk to him about Jeannie, I'm gonna hear a different opinion about it than I have, or a different kind of view of it than I have, and it's great because I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid to hear a different opinion about it. I'm not afraid of it at all. I like to hear it because it broadens me. It shows me that I can maybe have a different view of it and see it from a different angle. And that's healthy, people. That's healthy to take a broad view of things and take other people's opinions, because everybody has a different experience. And to be honest with you, it's been interesting because over this last conversation I had with him, I don't wanna put words in his mouth, but basically, he's starting to see things a little bit different too, because I'm able to, as I'm arguing, not arguing, but debating with him about these things, he sees it from a different view, and that's healthy for him too, not just me, but him too. And so this has been very good. I think the fact that we have brought different people on to talk about their experiences are great. The people that I have a problem with are the ones that won't even be open to hearing about the pain that she caused. They still have stars in their eyes. They still think that she's the Jeannie Mayo of 1985, and in that version of her wasn't that great, 'cause she was, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah,
But, you
just
know,
was yeah.
yeah.
Go
So, I
ahead.
mean, I don't get it, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, no, I think you're right. I think we need to probably in the future talk more about the spiritual stuff, because there are people, I guess what I've seen, Brian, you've seen this too, is people really get stuck there. When you've been sexually abused, and I have, that's wrong. There's no confusion in my mind that those guys that messed with me when I was a kid were right. Like, I'm not going, "Oh, they really did love me." I mean, I'm not confused about it. Like, I know that was wrong, right? The spiritual stuff is so much, it's like super glue that gets in your head that just glues all these concepts together. You that it just, it's breaking that out and pulling that apart is so much different, and I'm not gonna put it on a scale and say one's worse than the other, but I think it's different. It's a different kind of healing. It's a different kind of truth telling that, again, I know the stuff that happened to me sexually when I was a kid was wrong. I'm not I It has its own trauma, it has its own, set of, trauma and things I need to get over, and I have, but spiritual abuse has been like almost like gluing all these weird concepts together of guilt and shame and wanting to please, and that side in us that wants to please authority, wants to please people that we think have our best interests, and then we find out that they're just using us. There's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and that's, I mean, Brian, most of the anger, the people that have been on this podcast, that, and even Sean got criticized by some people on this podcast for not being so angry about the sexual abuse with her. And I think, again, I think it's because of that. Well, first of all, time has gone by. And then also I think you can't really judge his responses by, when he was kind of giggling and stuff. Sometimes that's nervous energy, and that people just respond different. But also, I think that there's no confusion in Sean that sexual stuff was wrong. But when I've talked to Sean, so have you, several times afterwards, and we're gonna have him back on at some point to give us an update. But the anger that I see coming from him is not the what happened, sexually, allegedly sexually with her. It was the manipulation stuff.
Yeah,
It was that. And
yeah,
and that's what we're talking about. That stuff angers people because
Yep.
they trusted. They opened up the vault and they let somebody into their inner parts of their life, and then you find out they were just in there to use you. They were
Yep.
just trying they were in there, they were on a mining expedition. They were going into your soul to mine out what they could use as leverage to control you, and that's like that's deep. You know what I mean? That's like, oh god, that hurts. And that's what I think people are waking up to.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, and when you talk to people who have been abused and traumatized, reading their body language or outward manner, how they talk about it. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I've read a couple things, couple articles about it. I've heard people comment on those criticisms and say, look, you know what, you can't, that's a book you definitely can't judge by its cover, because there's a lot of stuff going on down there and inside, and people deal with things in different ways. And, human beings are complex. So when something that happens to you young and you live with that and you keep it under the rug, then, it rolls around inside, and it has an impact and it has an effect. And so, three more fingers pointing back at me, but let's not be quick to judge these people. Let's let them tell their stories. Let's hear what is there, because that is some of the best therapy that they can have. But I love your analogy of super glue. And that's the thing that, I mean, where I come from. I mean, if I took a half an hour and described what my relationship was to faith, probably half you people out there would, I don't know, probably think I'm a heretic or something. I don't know. I have people who think in my life who think that. But what I think on the spiritual abuse side is really important here is there's all kinds of research, there's all kinds of anecdotal evidence that, people who have a faith practice, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for them. For people who have a Jesus-centered spirituality, one of the things that we're seeing with all of this nonsense with, the so-called church is it's poisoning that well. And I'm hearing Michael Jackson in my head, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, but that's what it is. It's impugning on something that could potentially be beneficial for someone. Now, I'm not here to evangelize you to any sort of faith or anything kind of like that, but that's one of the things that stirs me up about the misrepresentation of what that kind of spirituality ought to look like. And it angers me because you said that there's this, at least in our history, there's this propensity to leverage very negative, mentally unhealthy mechanisms to use people, and guilt, shame, all of those kinds of things. And um, that's been normalized in these circles. And like it or not, that can be traumatizing, and that can really mess with people's heads. Now, we've said it before and we'll say it again. I mean, if the pastor didn't shake our hands coming into church last Sunday, that is not spiritual abuse. We're talking about things that are way more systematic and way more deep. I mean, there's a degree here that we're talking about. So don't sit back and think, well, Mike and Brian are just blah, blah, blah. I mean, I believe that this is a serious problem. I mean, if you read some of the people who deal with, I hate that they call it this in the media, they call it church hurt. And I don't like that term because it really minimizes what it is. But if you read some of the literature on that, it's a very pervasive thing. I mean, the fact that there's academic literature on it tells you that it's a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah. Last night, I thought the Boston Bruins were playing at 9 instead of 9:30, and so I had a half hour to kill. So I was flipping around the channels, and I found, the end of The Wizard of Oz. So when they got the witch's broom and they brought it back, and I was just watching I've seen that as a kid a million times, but I was watching the wizard and, when they've exposed him behind the curtain and, "Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain," and I got triggered a little bit, Brian. I was like, that's been our life, is
It-
this pretend. I just kept thinking about people in my life who like Jeannie, like even, her husband. I mean, he was a good man in some ways, but he knew what was going on, and it was like the mechanisms behind the curtain were so private and evil and pretentious, and then when finally it was funny because when he like, there was some reality to the fact that guy could help, and he started, talking to them normal instead of through this, "Don't," "I am the great wizard," when he just started talking and he was more helpful, he was more real. I mean, not it was just different, but I guess that just triggered me a little bit because I was thinking, that's who we followed. We followed these people that were behind the curtain that were putting out an image, and it wasn't the real them. It wasn't really them. It was just this image, and that does a lot of damage. And by the way, the Bruins won in overtime 2-1. So I just want to make sure people know that. Well, Brian, this has been a good podcast. I am very grateful for you. And out there, everybody, I want you to know Brian's going to close us up, but I want you to know from me that I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for all the people that have come on, and even the ones of you that, have been critical of us. I'm grateful because it sharpens me and it helps me have resolve to what I'm doing. And it might straighten out some of the, errors that if we are in error, Brian and I have been, we really want to know that we are, and so we can correct those and tell the truth. Because in the end, that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that the truth wins. The truth wins. It takes a while sometimes, but I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Close
You
us up, Brian. Close us up, buddy.
I have a movie quote in my mind, Mike. It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. We're on a mission from God here.
A mission from God.
Is it from God? So all seriousness aside, I'm grateful for our friendship and where this has come. Super grateful for those of you who have supported this effort. Couple of knuckleheads, rant and raven, week over week. Grateful for all of our new friends, for everyone who's come on, for everyone who's communicated with us, sent us things, comments, both good and bad. I'm grateful that people are engaging in this conversation, not only across this platform, but so many other things, because at the end of the day, Mike, it's going to change things. Things are changing. They're not changing at the pace that we want, but they're changing. We'll talk about them in the weeks to come, but there's some pretty profound developments in the Chi Alpha case against the Assemblies of God. There's some other things that we've been reading about and talking about that we'll bring to you, but um, the momentum is in favor of the people who've been hurt, finding a voice and finding some healing and finding some justice. And that's probably one of the things that I think both you and I are the most grateful for. So, but again, thanks to all you guys who put up with us and, take a half an hour to an hour of your week to say, I wonder what these knuckleheads are up to this week. So,
All right, everybody. Have a great week. Spend time with your family. Give people hugs. Love ya.
eat some turkey or some tofu or whatever is your jam. Eat
No,
some
just
jam.
eat the turkey for crying out loud. All right. See you later. Bye.